Thanks so much for tuning into this conversation on Praj. It is about the numbers, and because it happens at the end of the quarter, and this the as per a lot of notes that I've read on most counts, the set by the standards that the company has, the numbers were below estimates. Revenues were flat. Gross margins actually expanded, and EBITDA margin also higher, but lower than estimated. That's the point. Let's get in Mr. Shishir Joshipura to talk about his thoughts. Mr. Joshipura, great having you. Thanks for taking the time out. To your mind, in this quarter gone by or in the half gone by, what worked and what did not?
Good afternoon, Niraj. Pleasure to be here as always. So we saw this was a very interesting quarter that we had. There's a very clear flow of EBP20 program that is flowing up in India that we have been witnessing over the past several quarters, and then and the whole growth was along that path. Apart from the ETCA dimension we talked about, LC, and I'll talk a little bit about it as well. So each market had its own unique driving force. United States was looking at low carbon ethanol. India was with the back of EBP20 and maybe starting of the CBG days. Energy transition and climate action program in United States, in Europe, more in developed part of the world. So we were seeing different drivers emerge in different parts of the world. And for different reasons, and that's what we are also learning, that the decision for Food Corporation of India to stop supply of rice to grain-based ethanol projects in India, that almost created a big atmosphere of uncertainty, because the only way India could achieve EBP20 is if we also encourage the grain-based ethanol production, as we talked in the past. Government moved very quickly, and at the back of that decision, there was also a lot of consultation, etc. And then they revised the prices of ethanol based on the market price of the feedstock. So FCI was not allowed to issue, but there was a lot of feedstock available. So that was corrected, but that sort of took out almost 8-10 weeks in a 12-week quarter. So we had a very large, probably the largest segment of ours, impacted to a big round of uncertainty from external factors. So that became an interesting battle to have, because that obviously meant that the new contracts slowed down, banks funding to the existing projects slowed down. We are not saying no, but let's hold and see what happens. So it was more like a hold kind of a situation, which is now gradually getting released. So that's the positive news that is getting released very quickly. Government moved to correct on the price side, but I think now everybody is aligning themselves to a new supply chain. Earlier, everybody thought we'll go the FCI route. Now I have to go to the market route. So every project has to have their own supply chain defined. The other push that came was most of the rice plants with some modification, can also adjust themselves to a maize-based plant, corn or maize, and that's abundantly available. That's very competitive. So that adjustment is also required. So I think a whole host of activities came from one external factor, which nobody saw coming. So that became very interesting. We have been speaking about the low carbon ethanol emergence in United States. This was a very good quarter for us, that we finally saw the first contract on that front walk in. Because I think it's important that we may have a theory, but that's the practice prove it. Yeah, it's very, very important. So that happened. So that tells us that yes, what we were saying was correct, is possible. The energy transition and climate action, we clearly saw an uptick of the activity on that front as well, and we have seen a build-up of an order book and an inquiry pipeline, both that is very clearly aligned to this whole dimension. About 52% of our order book in that segment came only from energy transition. So that's like a significant shift. So CBG, a lot of activity started to come on the ground. I had talked about a few.
Yes.
We receiving a largest kind of a letter of intent. The first contract out of that is now gone on the ground. We are building it. Our order book does not include the other 4 contracts yet, because the process is that you identify a piece of land, you do the survey for the feedstock, supply chain, etc., and then only project goes into a go phase. So since we do not have a go phase green flag from the customer yet, we are not counting as part of our order book yet. But at least it started to move in the right direction. So external and internal both factors, challenges of very different kind. We were able to sort that out, and now we are moving forward. But 8 weeks gone.
Got it. Mr. Joshipura, it is a bit of an uncertain world when it comes to supply chain, food economics, food security. Do you reckon that, I heard you say that the government moved quickly, the other crops are now brought into the picture and they are available in abundance. Could something like this happen again, simply because the geopolitical conflicts around necessitate maybe for governments across the world to ensure that for optics and for actuality, food security is first taken care of. So could that happen again?
Well, I think that's a great question. So here the problem was, and one could manifest in different dimensions, but what gets used for production of ethanol, the broken rice, is not eaten by people.
Got it.
Okay. We don't use, in India, we don't eat so much of maize. So it's not competing with the food chain. It's an additional, it's the spillover or the overflow of the crops that actually goes to production of energy, which is also a very, very important constituent of this. But what this is going to do is, it will also push people to think of different feedstocks. We just don't have to stick around to 2 or 3, but we will actually think in terms of alternative feedstocks. What can we do for feedstocks, say second generation feedstock, rice, straw, bagasse, which are not competing in the food chain at all? How do we bring them to play? And I think that is going to be the critical part of. So we will see an expansion of on the supply side of the feedstock, and of course the output side.
Okay, so just to clarify and round up this point, you reckon that the expansion of feedstock is possible, easy to do, and of course once that comes in at any point of time, it's like the diversion of risk or having more things out there, so that if one thing is blocked for whatever reason, supply or otherwise, the other feedstock comes and takes care of it. You think that's eminently possible immediately? So
yes, exactly.
Okay.
And I think what's very important, one more point it's very important for us to understand is this whole dimension of food versus fuel needs to be seen in its entirety, in the sense that any biological process by which we produce biofuels also produces, as a side product in several processes, it also produces a biofertilizer. Now, if you think of a fertilizer argument, most of the time we're talking about urea and nitrogen and phosphates and those elements that go to enrich the farmland, right? But the real argument has to be about how do you go ahead and substitute or replace or replenish the lost carbon from the soil. That's the big argument. And we have not even talked about it yet as a word, but that is the real problem. And these biofertilizers that come out of bioprocesses actually are very rich in the carbon content. So when they send it back, you are actually enriching the land and actually helping it become more fertile. You are protecting it from a long-term perspective, not only in short-term thing, this season and this crop, but also over a period of time.
So much needed.
I think therefore,
is the government listening to this? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I'm sure there people are. It's like this: something new starts, an issue comes up, you try and address that, and then you learn a little more. Not everything can be learned upfront. And I think some of these dimensions are also now becoming clearer to saying, oh, there is this. So we needed a fertilizer policy also to be formulated along with the Satat program for the CBG program, right? When we started out, it wasn't thought through like that, but very quickly it was realized that, hey, this is required by us to be done. If we don't do it, it will be non-starter. So I think this is the interplay of different facets, and we need to look at this dimension in its entirety, because if I keep on arguing only on one side of the equation, then I will let the other suffer. So I think the need is to find a balance in different feedstocks, in really exploring alternative feedstocks and finding the best use of these feedstocks.
Got it.
To technology. That's the key part.
Okay. Fair call. So thanks for that. Moving back to numbers, and today I know I have slightly lower time with you, but I'll still try and cover more ground. On the operational front, the revenues you've explained, it was flattish because of this 8 weeks thing. On the operational front, gross margins, did they do well due to the different business mix? Because that is what some of the notes were suggesting. And part 2 of my question, the EBITDA margins, the employee cost, again, the assumption is that going up had an impact on EBITDA margins not rising as much as people thought they would?
Yeah. So, we are, as we mentioned, that we are building for future as well. It's not only building for today. So the whole subsidiary of our ETC business, Praj that we launched with the Mangalore investment, where we have started to take people on board. There's team being formed. There is no production yet because they're still in the process of setting up the plant. So those costs are sitting additional, but there is no revenue commensurate with that. So that's one dimension. In our own overall business as well, it's directly a function of what mix we have. Right, one is the domestic versus export. That's one cut of mix. The other mixes are how do I have orders which are what we in our language we call it soft orders. Soft orders are those where we don't supply hardware. We just give the technology and engineering part of it. And those are different because there the top line and margins are different compared to hardware based margin. So mix on domestic versus export, soft versus hard orders, if I can use that, orders that include hardware. The other cut that we play, what's the mix within our own different business portfolios in that particular quarter that happened, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's actually a mix of all this, and then on top of all this sits the whole volatility in raw material prices. How did that happen, etc., which fortunately has been on a steady state now. We don't see volatile raw material prices, which we witnessed at least a year back. So it's a mix out, and we try and find a good balance to all these factors such that we are able to return. This is something that I've said also, that we want to focus on a healthy growth. We just don't want to grow for the sake of growth. Of course, that is not taking away the fact that we are finding avenues for growth as well. But when we are finding those avenues, we're also being very, very conscious of the fact that we build a very, very solid, very, very healthy portfolio of businesses.
Yeah, well, in some fashion over the last 3-4 years, it is showing in numbers as well as the kind of diversity in your business too. But just wondering, Mr. Joshipura, would you believe that this is the nature of operational metrics that you would probably now work with, considering the balance that you want to achieve as well? Just saying this because somehow the estimates of what you would do are usually much higher. So I'm just trying to understand, would you want to maintain this mix?
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at this. One response to this could be that we will try and see what are we doing to drive expectations more than what we have to deliver. But more important than that, I think internally our dialogue is saying, hey, how do we live up to what's expected of us? That's probably a more positive way of looking at things. And knowing it that there are no quick fix solutions, we need to work on a process base such that over a period of time we are able to build a very, very solid base. And I have no doubt that if you look at it, there's always this immediate next 4 quarters. But beyond that, from a mid-long term perspective, I think we are building an organization which will be for keeps, and it will definitely be a very, very solid organization. So that's what our focus is. There could be a we should not have, but an external factor comes in and we are not able to manage that in such short period of time. Overall, from where I'm sitting, we are equally excited and no less excited about the future. In fact, the GBA platform that the government launched is, in our opinion, it could become a very, very path-breaking kind of leadership role for India in the world, and we'll be very happy to play our part as a company out of India.
Yeah, and viewers, for all of you who want to know a little bit more about Mr. Joshipura's view on this GBA alliance, we did a conversation with him about a month and a half back, where he's spoken about it extensively. Do try and hear that as well. I have one final question, Mr. Joshipura, before I let you go this time, and that is, you mentioned in the opening remark that there are some orders. So I saw the order book had a bit of a dip, and you explained the uncertainty. Does that get recouped, part one, in the normal course of business? And part two, related to that, I heard you say that there are some orders for which you don't have a final go from the government, from the customer on the CBG piece. So you only accounted for the one for which you have a go. There are maybe 4 or 5 on which the go is pending. Does that happen? Does that happen with some bit of immediacy? Is there some timeline to it usually?
Yes, there is a timeline. So we are our earlier understanding was that, I mean, to put it very simply, we had sort of said that, let's release 1 or 2 projects every month. That's the way we wanted to work on it, and we are sure that is the kind of timeline we are looking at. So some hiccup, but I think now it's rolling forward, and we should be able to see this move very, very fast.
Okay, well, so on a number of things, so much to look forward to already in the next quarter, Mr. Joshipura, when we talk to you. But to you and your team at Praj and your family, Mr. Joshipura, wishing you from all of us at BQ Prime a very happy festive season.
Thank you, Niraj. Thanks to you. Happy Diwali to you, the team at BQ Prime, and all the listeners that you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Much appreciate. And viewers, thanks for tuning in.